Hey YouTube, welcome to the third episode of Let's Talk. Recording this right after the, the fourth episode. Track, one moment. So I'm recording this right after the third episode. This is the fourth episode of Let's Talk. And today, we're going to talk about a little bit about some of the things that school systems have done that are kind of stupid, I think, just from watching the video and the facts that I've gotten on those things. And also just a little bit about, like, what can be done. Because things have to be done... Ooh, some spider webbies. But things have to be done on both ends. Because sometimes people would feel like this is stupid, and then I look at it and I'm like, no, the school system's totally right. They're the one in the right here. Anyways, starting off the ball, this is from an article that my friend sent me several months ago. Hold on a second. We got a bouncy ball. Yep, there's your bouncy ball. Anyways.
Thanks.
You're welcome. So, what else was I thinking of? Oh, right. Yeah, that was just a friend, and I was tossing him his bouncy ball back. Anyways, so, in this article, basically, there was a child, I want to say, she was maybe like 5, a little bit older, and her teacher didn't let her finish her snack of Oreo cookies. And she had some other things in that snack too. There was like a sandwich, and I think maybe some baby carrots, I think. So overall, that sounds like a pretty rounded, decently healthy meal to me. You got a sandwich. Sandwiches are usually pretty healthy. And then you got some baby carrots. Those are always healthy. And then you had a little bit of dessert. You know, some Oreo cookies. Oreos. I mean, okay, personally, I'm not a huge fan of Oreos. They're more on the sweet side of things that I don't extremely care for, but they're not bad. I've had Oreos before, and they're okay. But so anyways, so the teacher prevented her from doing that. And the article went on to say things like the mother was, what am I thinking of? Went on to say things like this. The mother said that, you know, what my child eats is between me, my child, and my doctor. Personally, I feel it's between you and your child. If you want to put doctor in there, sure. I mean, it's not a bad idea to listen to what the doctor has to say, see what you feel about it, you know. They do give some good ideas for what they eat, but at the same time, there's a lot of other things that I personally would say, no. I kind of get why you're prescribing this to my child doctor, but I don't feel... I have very south of modern medicine beliefs for things like that. Well, we'll talk about this in another episode. But, you know, and so she said that, and also that her child was pretty healthy. You know, she got some good exercise, all these different things. This little girl got good exercise, wasn't really unhealthy, and it was coming on to the weekend. You know, the weekend means you don't have to go to school and do all of your studying and stuff. You just play. Have fun with your family and friends. What's wrong with having a little treat going into the weekend? So, reading that, it makes me feel like this, but I have to kind of control myself so I don't get too angry, you know. Being angry at everybody isn't right, but it makes me feel like, get your sometimes messed up hands out of my kid's lunchbox and keep them out. Keep them out of my kid's lunchbox and every other kid's lunchbox. Now there is one exception to that, okay? I mean, obviously, just don't. It's dumb. I mean, personally, I feel you do have... What am I thinking of? Yeah, so it's kind of sort of a responsibility of the school to make sure your child's doing well, keep them educated right. Then, of course, there's no child left behind, and they ask a fish to climb a tree, that sort of a thing. So it's not perfect, but it is kind of their job. And obviously, if they saw some kind of bad things going on, with this child, then they should most definitely kind of sort of maybe pull the plug. Just kind of say, hey, I think something's going on with this child's family. Have government intervene, which that's not perfect either, but if something is going on, they should try and do that and make it better if it's really bad. But if it's not, then there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, certainly if the family doesn't eat completely healthy, that's not something to call the government for at all. You still have your choices in the family that they can be making. So going back to it, they really should just keep their hands out of a kid's lunchbox. Unless, of course, it's like super extreme scenarios. Like, I mean, if you could somehow find out that all they were doing was feeding the kid Oreos. One second, I got something in my shoe. Little rock here. But if you could find out that all they were doing was feeding the kid Oreos 24/7, okay, then I would say yes, maybe possibly think about doing something that's really not right. But for the most part, just keep your hands out of kids' lunchboxes. And it's the job of the parents to decide what their kid does and doesn't eat. But the exception to this is if you've got a kid who, I don't know what it's called, but some kids, if they eat a certain type of food dye or a certain amount of sugar, they get a little bit rowdy, rambunctious, crazy. They can't control themselves. So in that scenario, if that happens, like they pack cookies for the kid's lunch, the kid eats the cookies, gets rowdy, rambunctious, and harder to control, distracts the rest of the class so their kids aren't learning as much, then what you want to do is you want to call the parents in and politely ask them to not put cookies in their kid's lunchbox. Say, your kid gets rowdy and more rambunctious when he eats cookies. I'm sure you're aware of this. I'm sure that you're aware of this. And then if they're not, then talk to them about it and what might be going on. Because maybe for whatever reason they don't notice it, or the kid just doesn't have cookies when they're at home. I don't know. But, just politely say, would you not pack cookies in your child's lunch? Because it makes him rowdy, rambunctious, and he distracts the rest of the class. And hopefully they'll say, okay, we'll do that, or try and work something out. If they don't, then the next step is to say, well, okay, I would invite you to attend class with your child one day and pack cookies in their lunchbox so you can see for yourself. And then if they still say no, for reasons other than we're too busy at work and stuff like that, because if they say they're too busy at work, then you can just get a little clip. Just pull out your cell phone and record their kid doing this sort of a thing and show it to the parents. And then hopefully that will solve things. But if that doesn't, try and get them to come in. But if they say they don't want to come in for any reason other than they're too busy at work and whatnot, then you can try the video thing, or try saying, well, hey, look, if you come in and this is not happening with your child, if they're saying that doesn't happen, that's not possible, so you can say, look, you don't want to come, well, why don't you just come in anyways? And then, if your child doesn't act this way when he eats the cookies, if he's not distracting to the other classmates, then you can kind of sort of rub it in my face and go on your way, and I will admit that I was wrong. So, yeah, and ultimately, hopefully that worked out. And the last resort, this is the thing you want to do, the absolute last, only if you absolutely have to. Your last resort is to say, well, okay, you guys aren't going to do anything, and he is a distraction to the rest of the classroom, so I'm going to have to kick him out of class. Kick him out of the school. But before you do that, though, also, I mean, if you can't get the parents to do anything, then see if you can do anything. See if your school has a possible extra teacher or resource or anything possible to help teach this child, even when he's on sugar high going crazy, a separate classroom or anything. I know it costs money for that resource and that separate classroom, but if you at all have it available, if you've got a teacher that is perfectly capable of teaching him in that mode, but at the same time isn't doing anything at a particular time of the day, is able to help out, willing to, then do it. Then you just say, hey, you want to help out? That's so weird. That's my church building down there. From all the way over here, it just looks so weird. pessimist view. Anyways, so you want to make last resort be kicking them out of school, you know. So then now we're going to talk, some of the things that I've seen, I watched a few videos, like, you know those channels that do list videos? And for some reason, somehow, they all end up doing similar lists, and they all have the same, like, 10 stories, but they say it in a different way. They each give slightly different facts about it. They all have a slightly different style. They say things differently. So, you know, you pick who you like, which one of the channels you like. But I've watched some of those, and so these are coming from those list videos, which surprisingly don't have any sources. But it's, some of the things that they've listed, which I personally feel are stupid. Like, one of them was a kid brought a Lego minifigure into school with a little gun. And they took it away from him. And he was able to get it back, but I think asked not to bring it back to school. And that, I think, is extreme. I mean, yes, guns are a serious issue at schools because of all the number of shootings that go on. But it's just a Lego gun. But I'm kind of in the middle. Kind of on both sides, almost. So, ultimately, I think what they really should do, if they absolutely must, we're worried about it, is say to the child, could you not play with that anymore? Just put it in your bag because guns are dangerous and we're really worried about, you know, them being around school here just because of the kinds of things that have happened. Explain to him and ask him to maybe put it away and then not bring it back to school. You know, don't just take it away from him. That's too much. So, a little bit on both ends. Then there's one really, really stupid. A girl, she found an L-shaped piece of paper on her desk. She didn't make it at all. Didn't create it. It was just sitting there left over from some other kid or something. Somehow it ended up on her desk, and so she just picks it up and throws it away because she doesn't need an L-shaped piece of paper. Well, guess what? A gun looks like an L too. And so some other kid said she's got a gun or a piece of paper that looks like a gun, and then the teachers got a little bit too out of hand and crazy, and I think she was like suspended or something. And there was one interesting thing from one of these top 10 videos on this subject mentioned that, like, for one of these, the media got on the side of the parents, proving that they can be useful for something, which I thought, I mean, now that I'm older, I can look at it and see, okay, yeah, the media does kind of slant things, and so now I see why that makes sense for his point of view, but I thought that was just interesting. But ultimately, that one is really dumb. It's like, I mean, look at this scenario. Let's say that I am making a project for school and I've got a picture. Maybe I drew the picture, or I have a photo of myself or someone else, and I want to put it in kind of a nice frame. And you know how, like, a lot of the scrapbooks, they have those corners where you slide the picture corners into the little tabs, and it fits in place without a border around the whole picture, just the L-shaped corners. So what if I wanted to glue some L-shaped corners made out of an orange piece of paper, a nice decorative paper, onto the other piece of paper to slip my photo in? And so I do that. And then what happens? Well, then another kid says, look, he's got an L-shaped piece of paper. It looks like a gun. Take him to the principal's office. It didn't happen that way, but it's still stupid and dumb. If I was actually pretending it was a gun and pointing it at people, maybe, possibly, yes, you could say, then you could say, okay, maybe, possibly, because I'm making those sorts of actions and I do need to learn a little bit of something and be maybe careful with it, Don't threaten people, even in joking, if the other person's not in with it, if we're not actually playing airsoft or something, or Nerf or whatever gun you have it, then maybe. But if all I'm doing is cutting L-shaped pieces of paper, then it's completely uncalled for. I don't look at an L-shaped piece of paper and think, oh, it looks like a gun. No, I'm not that way. Then, what's the other thing I'm thinking of? Oh, there was one more story that I'm not going to mention here. If you really want, you can go and watch these list videos. I will warn you, this one isn't entirely family friendly, which is why I'm not mentioning it on this channel. But go, that one right there is so stupid. And okay, I'll say it's abuse. It was a little bit abusive. That's all I'm going to say about it. And so it's like, no. Why are you... Yeah, it's, some of those things are really dumb and stupid. But now, the side where I'm taking the side of the parents, there was, I think this was over in Australia, there was an answering machine. And it's at the school, all the teachers unanimously voted, and the answering machine goes something like this, hello, thank you for calling your school. If you're calling to complain about your child's low grades, then press this button. If you're calling to swear at a teacher, press this button. If you want to hit a teacher, press button. You want to request a new teacher for the third time this year, press this button. If you, however, realize that your child's grades and attitude are up to you and your child, then please hang up and have a nice day. Something like that. There were a few other things that listed. And that one, I'm definitely on the side of this school. And this leads into my point about, like, what kind of things can be done. That part right there, it's definitely the responsibility of the parents and their children. And, I mean, you're not very smart if your kid comes home with a couple, like, say 2, maybe 3 pages of homework, and they sit down and play some video games on the TV, and you don't complain about it, or maybe they come home and they spend 10 minutes and get half of one sheet done, and then go play video games, and you only call them back for dinner and you don't do anything about it. If that happens, then, you're not very bright. And something needs to be done, and that's your fault. Not the teacher's fault whatsoever. Yes, there are scenarios, like I mentioned earlier, where your child is a fish, and you're asking, and the school system is asking your child to climb a tree. That happens sometimes, but at the same time, it's a both-way thing. So, things that can be done to fix the school system are on both parts. I mean, so if your child is special, work with the school, see if there's anything they can do. At the same time, looking to see what you can do. Go and say, hey, I don't know if you guys actually realize this, my child is kind of special. And is there anything we can do? Can we put him in some sort of a special program that's not going to force him in any way, do anything like no child left behind stuff? But is there anything we can do? Help him out and see what you can do to help him out. Maybe for whatever, maybe the school actually isn't capable of doing that because they have, for whatever reason, they have just the bare minimum of teachers. And, like, if they don't want to pay another teacher because more money for the higher-ups, then the school needs to do something about that. But if they just can't find anyone else to teach, and they're stuck with it as it is, then you kind of want to go towards a, look at what you can do for your child. Because maybe there is something you can do. Maybe when your child comes home to do homework, you working with your child will help them understand and grasp the concepts and do better in school. And then ultimately solve things. And that brings up another thing too. Like for me, I was homeschooled. Could have been a little bit more done as far as the homeschooling part of things. But I mean, you had me, my dad who's stuck in a wheelchair, and my mom who's caring for both of us. So you kind of sort of get little problems with that. It's not, she can't 100% teach me and stuff. So for me, and I'm not huge on learning like homework and stuff wise. Certain subjects I don't like as much, like math and things. I don't really care for math. But so it's kind of like, do I want to homeschool my kids? Well, it kind of depends on what my wife wants to do, because that it would be a joint effort. But do I want to do that and then have to bother teaching them and going through all of the learning process? Even though I'm teaching somebody else something, it's like, I know the math, but I don't like the math, and so I don't really want to teach it to anybody. But if I do that, I will, of course. And then, or just shove them in school, which can kind of sort of make a child lose his creativity. More on that in a bit. And then not really have to worry about the full entire teaching, just help them with their homework. But, the point, it's a joint effort. The school, there are plenty of things the schools can do to improve, but you also have to be doing something on your end. And I don't know all the specific details of things and all the specifics that a school could use to improve, because I'm not really avidly reading up on that, But So, final thing is, the reason I was homeschooled, and it's about keeping your creativity. And I got two things that illustrate this. So one thing, kind of my experience, I mentioned I was talking to a person I met once at some big steak event, and like a pool party thing, and they were saying, you know, I mentioned that's why my mom put me in homeschool, and he said, oh, well, that's kind of interesting, you know, I wanted to be an artist, then I went through school, and now I don't want to be an artist. So, kind of sort of proof. And like the school system is more of, we're doing this and you're doing it with us, kind of a thing, is why it kind of leans away from keeping kids' creativity. But then, the other thing, this is from my mom, she's the one that told me this story, but when I was young, we went up to Salt Lake City, and we went to some, I forget what it was, but it was one of those events where they have different booths you can go visit, and there was a kids booth, like a crafting booth, where you could make something to take home with you. And so when we got there, I dove in and started making something immediately. And so the lady running the booth says to my mom, you know, usually I have to get kids to think outside the box. And my mom says, he doesn't know that there is a box. Which is true. I think of some crazy outlandish things that definitely do not fit inside of the box that our society has created. And now that I'm older, of course, I see it, I realize what the term means, but I'm still always thinking outside of it. And so that's why I've done homeschool. And anyways, there's a little bit of my thoughts on schooling, things that schools have done not so great, things that we can do to improve the school system, working on our end and their end. If you guys liked the video, you know what to do down below. See you guys in the next one.